There is a place on the edge of Gray Hollow where time no longer behaves the way it should. The railway line cuts through the land like an old scar, rusted steel half buried in gravel, wooden sleepers cracked and sinking into the earth, as if the ground itself is slowly swallowing them. No train has passed through these tracks for more than 30 years, yet they never feel abandoned. They feel awake, watching, remembering. During the day, the tracks appear harmless, just metal and wood, silent and still beneath an open sky. But when evening comes, something changes. The air grows thick and heavy, as though the night is holding its breath. Birds disappear without warning. Even insects seem to know better than to linger. Locals say dusk is the worst time. Not midnight, not dawn, dusk. That moment when the sun bleeds into the horizon and shadows stretch longer than they should. No one walks the tracks then. Children are warned early, travelers are quietly redirected, and anyone foolish enough to ask why is met with silence, the kind that answers more than words ever could. Old warning signs still stand near the crossing. No trains, no trespassing. The paint is faded, the metal is bent, and no one remembers who put them there. People claim the silence around the tracks isn't empty, it listens. Footsteps echo even when no one walks. Gravel shifts under unseen weight. Sometimes, if the wind is just right, the rails release a low, hollow hum, not from pressure, but from memory. As if they remember trains that never arrived, as if they remember footsteps that never left. At dusk, the tracks grow colder than the surrounding ground. Those who stand too close feel a strange pull in their chest, subtle, undeniable, like an invitation. Not forced, never forced, just encouraged. And then there is the stillness. A stillness so deep it presses against your ears until you realize you are listening for something you cannot name. That is when most people turn away, because everyone in Gray Hollow knows one unspoken truth. The tracks no longer belong to the living. They belong to what waits between moments, between light and darkness, between arrival and departure. And when dusk claims the sky, the railway remembers what it was meant for, not trains, but souls that never finished their journey. The story everyone avoids telling begins with a wedding that was supposed to change everything. Her name has been lost to time, spoken less and less until it faded into rumor. But once she was real. She laughed loudly. She walked barefoot through her family home. She was loved. On the evening before her wedding, the house was filled with excitement. Pressed dresses hanging by the window, flowers soaking in buckets of water, relatives whispering plans for the morning ceremony. She was seen last just before dusk, wearing her white dress, her veil folded carefully over her arm. She told her mother she needed air, that her heart was racing, that she only wanted to walk for a moment and calm herself before the long day ahead. No one thought twice. Brides get nervous. Everyone understood that. She never came back. When the sun rose, panic spread through the house like fire. Her fiancé searched the streets. Her brothers ran into the nearby fields. Neighbors checked the forest edge and the riverbanks. Her name was shouted until voices cracked. Nothing. No footprints. No torn fabric. No signs of struggle. It was as if the night had opened its mouth and swallowed her whole. By morning, the search reached the railway. The tracks had already been abandoned for years, but something about them drew the searchers in, and there, tangled between the rusted rails, lay her veil, perfectly white, perfectly clean, folded as if someone had placed it there with care. There was no blood on it, no dirt, not even a tear, just silence. That was the first detail that unsettled the town, not what was found, but what wasn't. No body was ever discovered. Days passed, then weeks. Eventually, the search slowed, and grief settled into the town like fog. The wedding decorations were taken down. Her dress was locked away. People stopped saying her name aloud, afraid it might bring something back with it. But the tracks changed. Those who passed near them claimed the air felt heavier, that the wind carried the faint scent of old flowers. At dusk, some swore they could hear soft fabric brushing against metal, like a dress moving where no one stood. Her fiancé returned to the tracks every evening for months. He said nothing, he only waited. One night, he didn't return home. The town never officially connected his disappearance to hers, but deep down, everyone understood. The bride never arrived at her wedding. Instead, she found something else waiting for her, something that refused to let her leave. And from that moment on, the railway stopped being just a place where trains once passed. It became a place where promises went to die. The sightings began quietly, the way all true horrors do. At first, it was only one person. A farmer returning home late claimed he saw someone standing near the old tracks just as the sun dipped below the trees. He thought it was a lost traveler, someone waiting for help. When he called out, the figure didn't respond. When he looked again, it was gone. No one believed him. Then a second person reported it, and then a third. Always at dusk. Always from a distance. They described the same thing, a woman standing between the rails, perfectly still. She wore white, though the color looked old, almost gray, as if it had been washed by years of fog and moonlight. Her dress hung loosely from her body, torn at the edges, brushing against the rusted steel. She was barefoot. That detail disturbed people more than the rest. Bare feet on cold metal, on gravel sharp enough to cut skin. Yet there were never signs of pain, never blood. She didn't shift her weight, didn't flinch, didn't seem to breathe. Those who saw her said the air around the tracks felt different, colder, thicker, as if stepping too close would mean crossing into a space where the rules had quietly changed. No one ever saw her arrive. No one ever saw her leave. She was simply there. Some thought it was a cruel prank. Others blamed shadows or exhaustion. But the consistency was impossible to ignore. The woman always appeared at the same stretch of track, always at the same time, always facing down the rails, as if watching for something approaching from the far end of the line. A train that would never come. As the weeks passed, fear replaced denial. People stopped walking near the railway at sunset. Parents warned their children to stay inside when the sky began to darken. Even the most skeptical residents avoided looking toward the tracks when dusk fell. And then came the dreams. Those who had seen her began dreaming of railways stretching endlessly into fog, of white fabric fluttering in windless air, of footsteps crunching softly behind them, always just out of sight. Some woke with the sensation of cold metal beneath their feet. Others swore they heard breathing in the dark, slow, patient, waiting. The woman never spoke during these sightings. She never raised her head. Her hair hung forward, hiding her face completely. It was as if she understood something everyone else did not, that once you see her eyes, you will never forget them. And forgetting, it seemed, was the only mercy she allowed. The town began to give her a name. They called her the Corpse Bride, not because she looked dead, but because she looked unfinished. Like someone who had stepped out of life before it was ready to let her go. Standing between two rails, between two moments, between what was promised and what was taken. The whispers did not begin immediately. At first, the woman on the tracks was only something to be seen, a shape at dusk, a white figure frozen between the rails. But seeing her was never the true danger. Hearing her was. The first whisper was reported by a man walking home just as the sky turned orange and gray. He said it sounded like the wind slipping through metal, soft and distant. He ignored it. Everyone did at first. Then the whispers became clearer, not loud, not threatening, but intimate. People described it the same way, as if someone leaned close and spoke only for them to hear. The voice was gentle, almost loving, and it always said just one thing: their name. No one ever heard her speak a sentence, no warning, no plea, just a name spoken perfectly. That was when the rule was born. If you hear your name near the tracks, do not respond. Those who did said the air changed instantly. Their chest tightened, their thoughts slowed. It felt like something had reached inside them and quietly claimed ownership. Some turned around, hoping to see who had called them. They never saw a face, only white fabric shifting slightly, as if in a breath that wasn't meant for the living. After the whisper, people were no longer the same. They became distracted, restless, drawn toward the railway without understanding why. Even miles away, they claimed they could still hear the rails humming softly beneath their feet. The town realized something terrifying. The corpse bride didn't chase anyone. She only needed to know your name. Eli was the first to hear her clearly. He wasn't a believer. He laughed at ghost stories and rolled his eyes whenever the corpse bride was mentioned. To him, the tracks were just rusted metal and old wood, nothing more. That confidence didn't protect him. One evening, after closing the gas station near the crossing, Eli took the shortcut past the railway. The sun was already sinking, staining the sky a deep red. The air felt heavier than usual, but he ignored it. Halfway across the gravel path, he heard his name. Not shouted, not questioned, whispered. He stopped walking. At first, he thought it was his imagination, stress, fatigue. He almost laughed until the voice spoke again, closer this time. His name. Eli turned. She stood between the rails. Her white dress clung loosely to her frame, its edges darkened with age. Her hair fell forward, hiding her face completely. She didn't move. She didn't step toward him. She didn't need to. When she whispered his name a third time, Eli felt something slip inside his chest, a quiet certainty that terrified him more than fear ever could. He backed away slowly, never taking his eyes off her. The gravel shifted beneath his feet, loud in the silence. The moment he looked down, she was gone. That night, Eli didn't sleep, and though he didn't know it yet, the tracks had already learned his name. After that night, Eli stopped being fully present. At work, he stared past customers as if listening for something far away. He forgot simple things, keys, change, entire conversations. When asked what was wrong, he only shook his head and said he was tired. But the nights told a different story. Eli slept in fragments, waking to the sound of footsteps outside his window, slow, bare, always pacing back and forth on the gravel below. Each time he looked, there was nothing there, only disturbed stones leading away from his building, never toward it. He began to feel the tracks even when he was nowhere near them, a faint vibration under his feet, a low metallic hum in his ears, like rails remembering the weight of something that no longer passed over them. At sunset, his body reacted before his mind did. His steps slowed, his chest tightened, his feet angled toward the railway without his permission. Once he found himself standing at the edge of the crossing with no memory of how he got there. The sky was darkening, and the rails gleamed faintly in the dying light. That was when he understood. The whisper had not invited him, it had marked him. From that moment on, Eli spoke of the tracks as if they were alive. He said they were teaching him a path, one that felt familiar, like something he had always been meant to walk. And each night, the pull grew stronger. After that night, Eli stopped being fully present. At work, he stared past customers as if listening for something far away. He forgot simple things, keys, change, entire conversations. When asked what was wrong, he only shook his head and said he was tired. But the nights told a different story. Eli slept in fragments, waking to the sound of footsteps outside his window, slow, bare, always pacing back and forth on the gravel below. Each time he looked, there was nothing there, only disturbed stones leading away from his building, never toward it. He began to feel the tracks even when he was nowhere near them, a faint vibration under his feet, a low metallic hum in his ears, like rails remembering the weight of something that no longer passed over them. At sunset, his body reacted before his mind did. His steps slowed, his chest tightened, his feet angled toward the railway without his permission. Once he found himself standing at the edge of the crossing with no memory of how he got there. The sky was darkening, and the rails gleamed faintly in the dying light. That was when he understood. The whisper had not invited him, it had marked him. From that moment on, Eli spoke of the tracks as if they were alive. He said they were teaching him a path, one that felt familiar, like something he had always been meant to walk. And each night, the pull grew stronger. Eli vanished on the third night. No one heard a scream. No one saw him leave. His apartment was exactly as he had left it, lights off, bed untouched, door locked from the inside. But something felt wrong the moment they stepped inside, as if the room had been emptied of more than just a person. The search began before dawn. They found him near the railway crossing just after sunrise, or rather, they found what he left behind. His shoes were placed neatly beside the tracks, toes pointing toward the rails. His jacket lay folded beside them, as if he had removed it carefully, without fear or urgency. His phone rested on the gravel, screen cracked, still recording. The audio lasted 11 minutes. For most of it, there was only wind. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching softly on stone. Eli's breathing was audible at first, uneven and frightened. Then it stopped. A woman's voice replaced it. Soft, close, loving. She whispered his name over and over, as though practicing it, learning every sound. The recording ended abruptly, cut off by a sharp metallic screech, like metal dragged across metal. No body was ever found. The police called it an accident. Some suggested he'd been hit by an illegal freight train and carried away. But everyone in Gray Hollow knew the truth. Eli had answered the call, and the tracks had accepted him. For days after Eli vanished, the town said nothing. People avoided the crossing. Conversations ended when the tracks were mentioned. Fear doesn't always scream. Sometimes it waits quietly, hoping no one will wake it. Then an old woman broke the silence. She lived alone at the edge of Gray Hollow, in a house older than the railway itself. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of someone who had been waiting a long time to be heard. She said the corpse bride was not angry, she was abandoned. On the night she disappeared, the bride had waited by the tracks for a train that never came, believing it would take her to a future that had already been stolen. When dawn arrived and no train appeared, something inside her refused to move on. The tracks became her altar. The woman explained that the corpse bride does not kill those she whispers to, she gathers them. Once she knows a name, she begins to pull that person closer, night after night, until walking the rails feels more natural than leaving them. Those who reach her don't die, they stay, walking beside her, waiting with her. Together they listen for a train caught between worlds, one that can carry them somewhere that feels like closure. The old woman ended with a warning. The bride is not lonely anymore, and she is always listening. I told myself I only wanted proof. Proof that the stories were fear feeding on grief. Proof that the tracks were nothing more than rust and memory. I went just before sunset, when the sky was still holding on to its last light. The crossing was empty. No wind, no birds, no sound at all. I stepped closer to the rails, feeling the temperature drop beneath my feet. The metal looked darker than I remembered, almost wet, though no rain had fallen. The air pressed in on my ears, thick and expectant. That was when I heard it. My name. Not loud, not rushed, spoken gently, as if someone had been waiting for the right moment. My body froze. Every instinct told me not to turn around. The stories rushed back, the rules, the warnings, the disappearances. The whisper came again, closer this time. I felt breath against my ear, cold and patient. The scent of old flowers filled the air, sharp and sweet at the same time. I wanted to respond. The urge was overwhelming, to answer, to turn, to finally see her face. But I didn't. I stared straight down the tracks, into the deepening dusk, and waited until the voice faded into silence. Only then did I realize something far worse. The rails beneath my feet were humming. I left the tracks before night fully arrived. I don't remember turning around. I don't remember walking away. I only remember the sudden distance between myself and the railway, as if the darkness had blinked and moved me elsewhere. But the feeling never left. Since that evening, I hear the rails even when I'm nowhere near them, a faint vibration beneath my feet, a low metallic hum that rises whenever the sun begins to set. It follows me through streets, through rooms, through sleep. Sometimes, in the quiet hours just before dawn, I hear footsteps outside my door. Slow, bare, patient. I never open it. The old woman's warning returns to me often, that the corpse bride is no longer alone, that she walks the tracks with those who answered her call, learning new names, waiting for someone else to listen, waiting for someone else to respond. They say if you ever dream of walking endless rails, you are already closer than you think. That once the tracks recognize you, they never truly let you go. I still avoid dusk, still refuse to stand near abandoned crossings. And yet, some evenings, when the world grows quiet and the light fades just right, I swear I hear a whisper behind me, soft, familiar, loving. It never says my name anymore. Not yet. If you ever walk near old train tracks at sunset and hear someone whisper yours, do not answer. Do not turn around. Because the corpse bride is always waiting, and the tracks remember everyone who listens.